Ba-da-bum, ba-da-ba-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da.
There we go. Howdy, folks. This is From the Middle, episode number... .007. Coming at you from Columbus, Ohio. My name is Kendall Alala.
I'm Kory Hubble.
And Dylan Hubble.
And we are three middle-class guys living in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. We thank you for joining us again, especially those of you who this is your seventh podcast experience with the three of us. We appreciate you learning with us and listening to us and putting up with our shenanigans. And no, seriously, the likes, the comments, the shares, all of that stuff means so much to us. And as far as this podcast is concerned, means everything to us. So we appreciate that. Guys, let's go around the horn. Let's talk about, give some updates, what's going on with each other.
Cool. Before we start that, shout out to Samson111 for our intro music. Follow him on Instagram, SoundCloud, Twitter. His handle is @Samsin, SAMSIN 111. And we appreciate his track Movement is the segment from that is our intro. So I got some fact checks from episode 6, guys.
I will also add real quick that sometimes we in comedy say that people are friends of the show, and Samson, the guy who makes that tasty lick for us at the beginning, does other stuff that you should listen to, is an actual friend of the show.
A legitimate friend.
And then the other one is Ludacris, is also a legitimate friend of the show.
Not so much. But Samson, yes.
Yet. Not so much yet.
So, fact checks from episode 6. Fact check from the middle. Fact check. Ooh. Ding. Got some high harmonies. So we were talking in episode 6 about some video games. Kendall, the game we used to play on our mobile devices was Golf Clash.
Golf Clash, yeah.
Golf Clash is a great head-to-head golf game if you want to play golf remotely with your friends. John Mayer, you said a celebrity had tweeted about Pokemon Go, and you said it was John Mayer. It was, in fact, John Mayer, but in that tweet, at least, he had only spent $100 on Pokecoins.
Yeah, maybe there might have been a separate write-up, or BuzzFeed blew it up to be 1,000.
Not 1,000, but it was 100. But he could have kept going and had more tweets about it, but that episode, or that tweet was $100. You were talking about the Unreal Engine and that Keanu Reeves was going to be, his likeness was going to be in a game. That game is called Cyberpunk 2077, which is based off of a tabletop game from 1988 called Cyberpunk 2020.
Cool.
I know Kung Fu.
Yeah, that game comes out April 16th, 2020. And then the last fact check is I mentioned that a well-known director was talking about the medium of video games and the value of its storytelling. Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, and James Cameron have all talked about either their love of video games or seeing it as a valuable medium for storytelling. So there's a bunch of different directors who have talked about it. So anyway, there's some fun fact checks for you.
Yeah, we tend to do our due diligence and research after recording.
Yes.
Which is a different approach from what most folks...
No fake news from the middle. Right. It's all straight facts. Also, episode 007, we are not going to talk about James Bond at all. So maybe at some point on the show, but just wanted to throw that out there since we had our little Bond intro, not talking about Bond, although I'd love to, as someone who owns all the movies at some point.
We're talking about them right now.
Yeah, see?
Well, you know what I mean.
Okay, updates. I have a funny story that happened at Starbucks.
Do it.
So I have the Starbucks app where you can preload money, right, and pay for your coffee and stuff. So I knew I had exactly $7 on the Starbucks card. I'm on my way to an appointment, and I knew it was going to be a long drive, early morning. So I'm like, I'll swing by Starbucks, get myself my girly drink that I get when I go there, as well as a breakfast sandwich.
Yeah.
And so she says, that'll be $9.10. Please pull around. I'm like, oh, sweet, $7. It's going to be like $2.10. That's awesome. So I get to the window and she goes, that'll be $2.70. And I go, $2.70? I thought it was $9.10. And after I had scanned the card or whatever, she goes, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. It's $2.10. And I go to like be nice and be like, yeah, we all make mistakes. I go, well, those 1s and 7s can be tricky sometimes. And she goes, and I'm dyslexic, so.
Yikes. Foot.
And just stared at me.
Yeah.
So then I was like,
Me too. That's why I said it.
yeah. I was trying to express empathy. So that was kind of funny and awkward. And we were talking about funny human interactions. I also had a funny story about my daughter. She said that I could share on the podcast. So we had visited Cuyahoga Valley National Park, and there's a train up there that you can ride through the national park. And it was just her and I at this point. And she was very inquisitive. She's like, tell me about a time when you made a bad decision as a kid. Tell me about a time when you, blah, 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 all these stories, right? And I said, or tell me something that nobody knows that you did as a kid, like that was a bad thing that you did. I'm like, why does she want to know? So I turned the tables on her and I said, tell me about something that your mom and I don't know that you've done. And so she's like, it was like this grin, and I made it a safe environment that she could share this.
Yeah.
And so I said, have you ever said a cuss word? Like, have you ever cussed? And she goes, I tried it. I go, I tried it. I go, what do you mean you tried it? She's 12. I go, what do you mean you tried it? She goes, well, I know it's not like good, but like I wanted to see what it was like. So I was laying in bed and kind of just staring at my ceiling, and I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say a bad word. Well, she's a firstborn, so she's a people pleaser and sort of a rule follower. And so this is like a big deal for her to like explore the bounds of her.
Oh man, this is adorable.
I know. So it gets better. So she goes, I decided I was going to say the A word. So she goes, I just said ass, but I didn't like how I felt. So I just said Tronot. I didn't like how I felt, so I just said,
wow,
Tronot.
Man.
Right at the end.
And that's like,
So cute.
yeah, that is.
That's great.
I didn't like how I felt, so I quickly just said Tronot. So we could start the hashtag Tronot. That's adorable.
Yeah, that's really cute.
And then my last thing is we're getting ready to go on a mission trip to Honduras. We were scheduled to go to Haiti, but there's been a lot of civil unrest there, and so it would not be wise to take our 12 and 9-year-old girls to Haiti right now. So we're going to one of the organization's different locations to Honduras. So looking forward to that and excited to maybe share about our experience when we get back. So we leave in a week or so. So what's up with you guys?
So a couple things. We had our first fraudulent credit card activity, whatever. So I had just paid off the credit card like earlier yesterday, and we go to buy something minuscule. We went to department store, $7. Like, I know what the limit is. Just paid off the credit card. Card gets declined. Card gets declined. Switch cards. Go somewhere else. Card gets declined. Go somewhere else.
Oh, so this was big.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, maybe it's just my card. We tried different cards, whatever. So eventually I called the bank, and they made it about as easy as possible, which I appreciate. Mm-hmm. But they asked, they're like, well, here's the purchase that triggered our kind of fraud hold on the account. Did you make something like $95 purchase at Intimate Exposure in California? No.
And I wouldn't admit it if I did.
So we did not. So if you're listening and you took our credit card information, that's your last purchase. I hope you got something good, because new cards on the way. But it was crazy how fast. Like they have this down to a process that I was probably only on the phone with them for a minute and a half to 2 minutes. And they're like, oh, your card will be 7 to 10 days unless, it's your primary card. And I'm like, yeah, we literally don't use another card. They're like, okay, it'll be there Tuesday. So yeah, it was great. Like, take a couple days, get a new card. As great of an experience as it can be that somebody steals your credit card information. But, yeah, so that's funny. I try to use Apple Pay everywhere because that's like extra hyper encrypted and, the card number's never stored in a system. But it's so weird, like with all these small businesses and online resellers and stuff for things, you never know what people are doing with your stuff. So yeah, so hopefully if anybody else goes to that, it's an easy experience. And started a new job.
New job.
Woo. Yep. So going from tech company to another tech company, but it's a tech startup. So a little bit different. If you don't know, if you're in Columbus, you already probably know. If you don't, Columbus is like this hot spot right now for like startups and especially kind of tech driven companies. Obviously anybody on the West Coast is going to be like, yeah, right, sure. But
that's cute.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But like Columbus has got some awesome things going on right now. So exciting to be a part of that. It inside the office kind of feels like if you've seen the movie The Intern. Not actually the character part of it, but like, the brick walls and the beanbag chairs and the open air desks and, just really laid back culture. It's been awesome so far. So like definitely enjoying it. But yeah, that's been fun. So just one tech company to another.
But very different cultures.
Very different. The last company I worked for was massive, and I was a tiny, tiny piece of that because this is a startup. Way different experience. The CEO of the company that I work for now is, walking around with his noise canceling headphones and jeans and tennis shoes, right? So like way different experience than what I've ever been used to. So yeah, lots of fun so far, very flexible. Everyone's super cool. So yeah, it's just nice to like still feel like I'm kind of part of that tech, universe, but to be in a totally different industry, totally different end of the business world, like not a massive company anymore, like tiny relative to where I was coming from. So, yeah, super, super exciting. I'm sure I'll have more stories later. I haven't used any of the beanbag chairs yet, but I'll let you know.
Of course, there's beanbag chairs and a ping pong table. And
yeah, so super cool stuff. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
We use slides instead of stairs.
Like in Richie Rich.
Yeah, only got one floor right now, so no slides yet, but looking forward to it.
Culture is huge, and the more companies we consult with, I think that is the hinge upon which change happens, upon which like employee engagement happens and morale. Like you can be at a much, in air quotes, more successful company with a much more rigid culture or a very relaxed, fun, engaging culture. I mean, it's a piece of the puzzle that I don't think a lot of companies think about, but it's that sort of what kind of atmosphere and environment are you creating for your people?
Yeah, I think a lot of what people assume about tech startups are probably true. This is my first experience, but like, let's get rid of the micromanagement, the rigidity, this air of pretense that people are better, I'm more important. Oh, you can't say those things around that higher up person because of there's just none of that.
So the anti-hierarchy and sort of a flat organization.
Yeah.
Where we're all equals.
Yeah, kind of.
Open concept.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, very cool so far. And like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
That's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's cool to
working
be in that
downtown.
Yep, working downtown now. So I'm looking out, the windows to the Columbus skyline, and so it's fun.
Good for you, man. It's exciting.
Thanks, man.
Very good. My life hasn't been as exciting here recently. I feel like in previous episodes, I enjoyed being the one with the exciting life with the bird leashes and the garage sales and whatnot. But nothing nearly as exciting here lately. Let me think.
Did you make anybody at a Starbucks feel terrible about themselves?
No,
Okay.
I thought about it.
We were talking
didn't.
a little bit about the number of cyclists.
Yeah.
And I still want you to tell me what's new, but I think we were onto something with the old school cyclists versus the new cyclist. The reason I bring this up, so I was driving to where we record, and I've never seen as many accessories strapped to the bikes and bodies of cyclists than I feel like I see now. Like it's like Amazon exploded into a bike store. I don't understand.
Yeah,
like
no,
so
I think
we talked about the bookworm thing. Like you clip a light onto your book and it's got the little hinged like arm with the light at the end. Like I saw that attached to a helmet with a mirror.
That's pretty standard.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I don't bike, but like,
let's say like around here in sort of our little greater of Columbus area where we're recording this, there's a lot of cyclists around this area, and there's, I mean, you either love them or hate them, or you are them. Like it's that kind of situation. And I would say most people who aren't them tend to say, man, there's just too many.
Yeah.
And like you drive up on a group of like 15 of them, and it's like it's nothing but 2-lane roads here with a lot of curves and hills, and so you can't necessarily pass them right away, and that kind of thing. And so but I also think because like cycling is kind of blown up around here, there's a lot of newer cyclists, I think, who like anything else, like you get into a new hobby and you take a look at your ideal self and you're like, I'm a professional cyclist now. And so you buy all of this stuff and you're like, I need 2 lights on my bike, one in the front, one in the back. I need to have a mirror on my helmet, maybe another one off my handlebars, and streamers and a horn.
Yeah. I think a lot of people in the area know about Pelotonia, but for people maybe not. If that's spread, I think it has.
So part of it is the Ohio River to Lake Erie bike trail runs right through here.
Okay.
So that's why, especially up where you are in Granville, kind of that. I think that still goes. Maybe it doesn't go through there, but there's a lot of cycling over there. But my father-in-law actually rides that Lake Erie to Ohio River. Sometimes they go south, sometimes they go north. But that runs right through here. So that explains some of that.
Okay.
But anyway.
Yeah, Pelotonia is a huge, I guess it's a nonprofit, like Race for the Cure for Cancer organization that people raise money to ride. And so I don't know how far that extends beyond Ohio, but in Ohio, it's huge.
Yeah.
And that's why, because of those trails and things. So anyways, I just thought that was funny. Like maybe other people have noticed that, maybe they haven't, but that kind of dawned on me today as I was coming here, how many accessories there are.
Yeah. No, we bought a kiddie pool for our kids. So talking about my life again, an update. So that's an update for me. We bought a kiddie pool yesterday.
Because it's been warm. It was 90.
It's been stupid hot. And so we bought a kiddie pool and we put it on our deck. And so my wife actually today, while we're recording this here little podcast, took the kids to the local science museum to Kory, because we have a membership there, because we are the kind of family who's like, we don't want to walk around a zoo in hot weather, and Kory is air conditioned. And
Smart.
So we're doing that.
Smart.
That is what our family does. And coming home and letting the kids play in the kiddie pool. And we're finally going to answer the question of, do parrots swim?
I was just getting ready to ask. Was Toby in the pool?
I was joking.
Oh.
We don't plan on throwing them into the water,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe we'll have our first little video snippet on YouTube.
I wonder if
Bird murder.
Well, yeah,
that might violate YouTube's terms and contracts,
probably.
whatever. Is there some kind of flotation thing that you could put into the kiddie pool that Toby might sit on?
Yeah, probably anything that floats.
Yeah, so that would be a thing to try first.
I'm not going to try any of it.
Plastic log, maybe.
Okay.
Oh, fine.
That I thought that joke might have been funnier than it actually was. And
You're so deadpan, and it's
now
perfect, and I can't ever tell.
And now I have regret.
Yeah.
I can't ever tell with you. I'm like, he's either a comedic genius, or he's as awkward as he says he is.
You'll never know.
Yeah. We also have these
Did
pop.
he even buy a kiddie pool?
We have these pop filters in front of our face that also limits your ability to read somebody else.
It's true. You see nothing but eyes.
Nothing but eyes, and the eyes can lie. I tell you, The eyes can lie.
Now we're having a weird triangle of eye contact.
It's like the scene in The Office where they're playing the game, like there's been a murder, and they're all just like pointing their finger guns at each other, like they're skeptical of each other, like who's gonna be the first.
There's been a bird drowning.
There's been a bird murder. So, anyways, we talked a little bit about earlier on in one of the first couple episodes. Kory, I'm going to put you on the spot because I think it's really interesting. The idea of the life of an artist. So you've had this whole experience. Like, you didn't decide to become an artist like senior year of high school on a whim. Mm-hmm. And I think people would find it interesting to know a little bit more about your background and, you know, some of the things that like our parents saw in you at a young age, some of the decisions and people that kind of influenced that ultimate choice that you made to become an artist. And you had a way different experience even in college. Like most people that do go to college, you read, you write papers, you sit in big lecture halls, you go to a couple bio classes, you know, you solve some math problems. And most people don't go to art school. So it's just a different experience than I think what most of us have lived with. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. Go ahead.
Which fast food place do you manage?
That is the joke, certainly.
McDonald's, Taco Bell. So I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit and give us a little bit of the pre-college part of it. So tell us a little bit. What did our parents see at a young age? You know, who are some of the people that helped influence and guide you into that? Give a little bit of that background.
Well, this is potentially dangerous because I'm super passionate about this topic and encouraging young people who want to pursue that passion that might not be as typical for where they're from. So we've mentioned we're from a very small town, which is around, you know, a couple thousand people. So certainly there were not many, if any at all, who pursued a career in something like art. And that was the joke, like the starving artist that's going to end up managing a Wendy's.
Yeah. What does your wife do?
Exactly. So she's a doctor, so you can do art. That's cool. But I have been wanting to talk about the idea of like mentors and like general, to say success principles sounds really narcissistic, but just some of those decisions, to your point, Dylan, that decisions that you made that may have not been popular, but maybe helped encourage the idea of following that passion. So, so if I can guide your question a little bit, Dylan, I'll kind of twist it or add to that, just the idea of having mentors or people in your life that gave you that nugget that you needed to go to the next step.
Right. Yeah. You're going to be able to point the question a little more knowing your own background, but I was just setting the basic framework.
Yeah.
So go for it.
So a couple things. I do not think that as an artist I have arrived by any stretch. If you'll allow just a little hedging, there are artists half my age with twice my skill that I see their work on Instagram, and I'm like, I will never be at that level. But to your point, I am an example for coming from a small town. I am an example of someone who has managed to eke out a living doing the thing I love since the day I graduated, and that is art and drawing. That is a very foreign concept for a small town that you've been able to do that. So in that way, I think that's what interests people, like that you've managed to make a living doing this quote unquote potentially silly thing that you love, from what is primarily a working class community, a farming community.
Yeah.
And I mentor a few young artists, and that's what they and their parents want to know. Mm-hmm. Can she actually make a living doing this thing? And so in that way, I do think I am an example of someone who's managed to do that. So my personal belief system as a Christian is that we are given abilities and gifts and a purpose. So if you don't believe that, that's fine. I just happen to believe that you are wired. You've got a pre-configured set of things that you're naturally good at. And so because I believe that, I think it is our job as parents with our kids to sort of find what our kids' natural interests and giftings are and help guide them and sort of act like bumpers in bowling and kind of help them figure out what that is. Of course, they can all be astronauts if they want, but it's a little bit on us, I think, to help guide them and figure out what those more natural giftings and abilities are. So I think the first part of that is, if I've tried to rationalize why or how I've managed to eke out a living doing art, it is super supportive parents who, in the quiet of their bedroom at night, may have had doubts or questions like, is he really going to be able to do this, or is he going to work at Joann Fabrics his whole life in the frame shop? So I am a result of super supportive parents, and then later in life, a wife who has said in many crossroads moments in my career, I'll follow you wherever. I support you. I support your love of art. I will follow you. So, getting back to your question, it's as cheesy as it sounds. There was a banner in 7th grade that I saw on my way to our grandma's English class. Do you remember the rooms up above the stage?
Yep.
In the old building?
Yep.
There was a banner up there in Ada High School that said, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And as cheesy as it sounds, it hit me like, oh, you could actually make money doing the thing you love. That most of my friends' parents complained about their job, hated their job, every Sunday night would dread having to wake up and go do whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the first times where I went, could I actually get paid doing the thing I get in trouble for doing on the back of my math tests, which is draw?
Yeah.
I just love drawing. And so I remember asking my art teacher, Gary Wells, like, is this like, could I actually... And he said, it's going to take work. It's going to take effort. But yeah, you can do it. I believe you have some natural abilities there. So he grabbed me by the arm, took me to the guidance counselor, and basically made sure that I had art for the next 6 years. And then he said when he would give the rest of the art class their projects, he would sort of say, okay, I'm going to help you build a portfolio for art college. Because that's how you get into art college. You create a portfolio, show them the best of your work from high school, and they are able to judge and determine your skill level and then how much money of a scholarship they're going to give you. So even right there, you have a couple examples of people who, whatever, they saw something or were naive enough like I was to believe that I could actually eke a living out of that. And so I look back, it started that early, and I look back over the course of my life and career, and I am simply the product of knowing that I don't have all the answers and getting around people who I thought might. So whether it was my parents signing me up for, do you ever see those art instruction school, can you draw this bear?
Yeah.
They signed me up for that. It wasn't cheap. It was a through the mail art course. This was before the internet, and you would send in assignments, and you would have artists sort of critique your work and mark it up with a red pen and say, good job here. You need to do a little more of this. Like I said, my art teacher, and I don't know if I'm answering your question at all, but I'm trying to just give you some of the early, I guess, things that happened that made me think that this was a possibility. We also had a mom and a dad who had very atypical jobs for the area. Our mom was a Christian singer and recording artist. She produced like 14 albums. So we saw her in this sort of entrepreneurial, atypical thing, doing what she loved, singing, getting paid to travel the nation and sing at conferences and churches and retreats. And so that was probably an early signaling to me that, okay, she's doing what she loves.
Right.
Our dad was law enforcement. He was State Highway Patrol. That was a very atypical job for the area. So he was kind of doing, so I think all of that together, supportive people, people who encouraged me, and then seeing that following your passion was possible, and that you're only on this ball of mud for so long. Why would you do something you dread every day?
I think the art instruction school thing, like not being a literal school, it wasn't like an extra class or something. It being through the mail, it always makes me think about the kids who are like, I want to play basketball, and they went out and shot, for 3
Yeah.
hours. They'd just sit outside.
Yeah.
Or the person who wanted to play music, and they didn't just do music at school and then, they would sit at home and practice their instrument for hours a day. And so that reminded me a little of that like that was a lot of what you were doing. And I think what aided that, there's a story you'll remember better than I do, but something with our mom who, you drew a celebrity that you had looked at on TV like hours or days or weeks later, and you drew it from memory, and she immediately recognized who you were drawing at a young age. It's something like that. Was it Burt Reynolds or?
Yeah, it was stuff like that happening. To your point about kids shooting hoops or practicing, like I think every kid has a passion or something that they are naturally gifted at, but something happens where it stops. And they feel like they have to trade that for something that is, quote, realistic or worthwhile. For the world tells them, or parents tell them, or something tells them that interest you have is going to stop, and now you have to pick up something, a real job or a real pursuit.
Yeah.
And I just never had that stop. I was like, I think
Right.
what I was being shown was you can keep going with this thing. And so I get very emotional when I see people trade in their passion because some external factor has told them that is not worthwhile, or it's not going to make as much money as this other thing over here. And to see people settle or follow something that is less than in their own minds because of external factors or people, that makes me very sad. Like, I think that's a tragic.
Yeah.
I know sometimes in life you have to do something that you don't want to do. I'm not saying that. That's different. But for whatever reason, like I keep saying, and all of these things together, I thought, I'm just going to keep going with this. And so the decision was, it was either I was going to go into music, I was going to go to art school, or I was going to be a youth pastor. And so when I sat down, and I remember, I knew it was one of those three. I remember sitting down thinking, what comes the most naturally? Like, what is just the most natural? And it was art and drawing. And so I decided to go to a pretty prestigious and expensive art school. They gave me a very generous scholarship. And so that started to your point, other people were maybe not even sure yet entering their freshman year of college what they even wanted to do.
Right.
I was already sort of carving out a route based on everything I just mentioned.
So what was that like as you had your friends from high school of the same age and older who were already in college or going to college, not with you as in the same school, but
Right.
around the same time. So what was that like as everyone else is relating over doing the same type of work? What was it like for you? What are some of the things you were doing? I mean, I didn't go to art school. I don't know what a lot of that looks like.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like? Did you feel way out of your league? Did you feel, but everyone's doing different types of art too. So,
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Well, the decision to come down here for art school was way bigger, I think, than people realize. When you come from a very small blue-collar farming community, going down to the big city of Columbus, an hour and a half away, might as well have been Oz. Mm-hmm. It was like to make that decision. And again, almost every single person in 4 or 5 generations of our family has stayed in the same 15-mile sort of radius for the most part. So to even come to Columbus for college in itself was a huge culture shock.
Yeah.
But then getting here and going, wow, there's all these talented kids from all over the world. Again, CCAD was at the time, and I think in many ways still is, a very select group of people interested in pursuing art, everything from fashion and film and photography and illustration and animation. So you had people from literally all over the world of very different walks of life and lifestyle choices that I was familiar with. And I was like, it was eye-opening. But to your point about like what the type of stuff we were doing, you still had like writing courses. You still had some of that like literature and stuff like that. So you still had some of that. But for the most part, you're just creating nonstop. And at the time, CCAD was very focused on foundational studies. So it didn't matter if you were going to go into film or photography, you were going to draw and paint for 2 years. It was about getting those fundamental foundational skills. But you could say, I'm just going to be a photographer. I don't need to. Nope. You need to know how light works and shadow works and how the human body reacts to those things and anatomy. And so it was drawing and painting nude models for 2 years, no matter, almost irregardless of what your major was going to be. That
regardless.
Yeah, regardless, not irregardless. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that foundational study was huge. I think CCAD sadly has gotten away from some of that, and they're letting students go into their major a lot sooner, which I think, like anything else, the fundamentals are hugely important. But I don't know, that kind of answer your question about sort of the stuff we were doing. And then about 2 years in, you're starting to get more into your major. So now you're getting specialized attention, and you're being taught from people who are working in the industry. So one of my professors, for example, was CF Payne, Chris Payne, who at the time was doing the back of the Reader's Digest magazine. He was doing Time magazine covers. He was doing very prestigious work. So he'd be working on a Time magazine cover in class as he's teaching you. And you're like, these aren't guys that are just like, the old adage of, those who don't do teach.
Right.
This guy's like going to be my competition when I get out of here. Mm-hmm. And so from a professional level and from what I was getting into, I was very quickly learning, I should probably get around the people who are doing the thing I want to be good at. About that time as well, going back to the idea of mentors, I had Jason Bowser, who was a student advisor, I saw how he led things. I saw the type of father he was. I saw he was there for me in a pretty dark time. Like being around people who, I don't know, were in life where I wanted to be, whether professionally or personally. Mm-hmm. And so again, this idea was reinforced that if you want to get good at something, get around people who are good at that thing. That is the reason I went to art school, or else I could have, and many people thought, just stay in Ada, stay in Lima, take 2 years of foundational courses here, and then go to that silly art college, right? I felt that it was important that I get in that world as quickly as possible.
What are some... So you had mentioned mentors, getting into that kind of relationship. What are kind of some other things, other experiences, or just other things that you feel like that maybe you were willing to do that possibly some of your peers weren't, or because it's talent alone, skill alone, gifting alone isn't enough to get most people a career in the field that they exactly want. Yeah. Having a passion for it isn't enough to get you there. What are some of the kind of more practical steps or things that you had to go through that you were willing to do that you feel like maybe some others aren't?
I'm really glad you asked that question because it reminds me of something that happened junior and senior year that to this day boggles my mind. So Jim Theodore was a CCAD alum who started his own illustration studio. They created the Houston Rockets logo, so not the current one that sucks, but the old one that was better. And they did work for a lot of licenses for toy and game companies. So Hot Wheels and Hasbro, and I mean the list goes on. Big license, stuff that you see in stores and all over.
Yeah.
It was a very small studio, couple full-time employees and then freelancers. So junior and senior year, Jim Theodore and Jeff Dixon, the sales guy, they come into our junior and senior illustration class. And they just say, hey, we're here in Central Ohio in Gahanna, and this is the type of work that we do, and this is what it's like to work with real clients, right? So again, they're talking to junior and senior level illustration students who are about to enter this world.
Who need to be thinking about this.
Who need to be thinking about this. And at the end of their presentation, they spoke to all the classes. They said, we are 10 or 15 minutes away in Gahanna. If you would like to come and visit our studio, we would love to just show you around and flip through your portfolio maybe. and just have you visit. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So some weeks later, I don't remember exactly how much time it was, I called and I said, hey, you came into our class. Would it be okay I would love to take you up on your offer to come and visit. So they show me their offices in Gehenna. They had toys that they had made and box art from package design that they had done and all this stuff on their desks. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And at the end of that little mini tour they gave me, Jim said, did you bring your portfolio? And I said, yeah. And so he's flipping through my portfolio, kind of flippantly, no pun intended, but he's just kind of quickly going through the pages. And he goes, Kory, do you realize that we spoke to all the junior and senior illustration classes? I said, yeah. Do you also realize that you're the only person that took us up on our offer to come and visit?
Wow.
To come and visit our studio. And to this day, I graduated in 2007. To this day, I don't understand that.
That's insane.
So like there is a certain worth ethic that like has to be attached to something like that, right? You have to. It's not just I'm really good at drawing and I hope someone notices.
Yeah, and so at the end of his very next question was, would it be okay if we start sending you work?
Jeez,
man, that's awesome.
And I was like, yeah. So I've tried to think about, okay, there's sort of this mentality at art school of the bohemian artist who wants to sell his work in galleries, and I don't want to sell out to the man. And Sherry and I eloped when I was a sophomore in college, so I already had a family. And by senior year, I had an 8-month-old.
Yeah,
so
wow.
I don't know if just the reality of paying bills was enough motivation, but I'm like, there's no ego here.
Yeah.
I'll take any work, anything.
Yeah.
So he started giving me projects for like well-known companies, Coca-Cola, like some of this stuff and when he said, it was kind of a studio approach, like everybody had a different part. So one person would sketch it, one person would ink it, one person would color it, whatever. Mm-hmm. And when he started telling me what he was going to pay me for this stuff, for a guy who was just hustling, doing $50 logos or whatever I could, I saw those numbers and I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It was a game changer. And so, yes, there's this idea of like work ethic and being humble and sort of the idea that you're never too good for anything. Like, especially when you're first starting out, it's all about experience. And why did nobody else go there? I don't understand.
It reminds me a little bit of we're pretty far removed from Lord of the Rings, but if you've never watched the behind the scenes, it's almost the behind the scenes are genuinely almost as good as the movie. Like, it's super fascinating. And at one point, Ian McKellen, the actor that plays Gandalf, is talking about Christopher Lee, the actor that plays Saruman, the guy in the white robes, long white hair, and he's talking about Christopher Lee's acting career. And he's kind of joking a little bit, that Christopher Lee is an incredible actor, but he had been in some movies along the way that weren't as well received, but that he was always willing to take a role. And if you look at Christopher Lee's filmography, IMDb is quoting him at 282 films. 282 films that Christopher Lee was willing to I'll take any work. I'm not. Yeah. And that's kind of the picture he's painting about Christopher Lee. He wasn't above any kind of work. Yeah. Which I think that's great. And that's why Christopher Lee has just done so much in his life. Kendall, you were about to say something. Sorry, I interrupted, but that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say that I feel like that is a huge distinction there, and there's still room and place, and I don't fault anybody with creative jobs who sort of want to be that person who just paints, draws, and just begs for places and galleries to put their stuff up for sale, and I'm sure at some point, and they still probably have dreams of being able to support themselves that way, but they don't want to get involved sort of in any other way. They just want to do sort of creatively what's on their own mind. Yeah. That kind of thing. And I get that. It's just those are the ones who need to come to grips with the fact that that you're going to have to do something else too.
Yeah, and
I feel like that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like, so that's why, like, I kind of raised an eyebrow, not really at you, but like during that portion of the story that I don't disagree with, where you're saying that, like, when I just see people like trading in their passion so that they can, because they don't feel like, and I'm like, well, I mean, there are people where, like, trading in your passion isn't the necessary way to necessarily put that. Like, your passion isn't necessarily what you're doing for your work.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think that's good, because depending on what your passion specifically is, it's possible that you need to work so that you can fund your passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that too is I saw so many talented peers in my time at CCAD who sadly couldn't look somebody in the eye or give a firm handshake.
Yeah.
Or hand out a business card or do some like light self-promotion. And those people are going to have to rely heavily on like some web presence or an agent and some representative. Phenomenally talented. Mm-hmm. But that ability to also have a conversation and sort of like, so that was a reality too. Like, it's not a lack of talent there either. This is just, it's a little bit of yes and. Like, you got to have a little bit of that drive. I think so just to wrap some of that up, my relationship with Jim would continue. And I remember at least 4 or 5 times saying, okay, so now I'm freelancing for the Artifact Group. They're giving me work from time to time, but it's not enough to sustain, a family. And so I start freelancing on my own, starting doing logos and branding work and other work. And I would say, hey, Jim, can I get you a coffee and ask you some questions? Hey, Jim, can we go to Max and Irma's? I'll buy you a burger. How do you do invoicing? How do you do contracts? What should I be charging for logos? I didn't know the industry standards of things.
Oh, yeah.
And so that relationship became one more example of, I distinctly remember one conversation at Max and Irma's where I was sort of lamenting and whining that now I'm out of school, that a lot of my peers got their dream jobs right away. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of friends who within the first year of coming out of CCAD were making movies, were making video games, and were New York Times best-selling illustrators. That was not my story. Mm-hmm. I got a job in a tech company doing infographics. And I was sort of like whining, like, I'm doing org charts and pie charts. And I had this like, woe is me kind of thing. And Jim just starts laughing. And I'm like, I don't think you understand here. Like, I want to be doing those things over there. He goes, wait a minute. You're telling me that, imagine a ladder, and rung 1 of the ladder is paying the bills. Rung 2 of the ladder is your personal passion projects. And rung 3 is maybe like your 5, 10, 15-year life goal. So you're telling me that this boring day job that you hate is taking care of rung 1. You clock out at 5 o'clock, and now you have the luxury of being able to spend your evenings doing rung 2 and rung 3. It sounds like you have the perfect situation.
There you go. Yeah.
And I was like, it completely shifted my mindset. And so it was those conversations that, like I said, I would get that nugget that I needed. And it was it's countless people, right? Like, right out of school, there was a guy who's very entrepreneurial and sales-minded named Craig Wolpert, who saw a flyer that I had put like at a coffee shop. And he just said, hey, I'm not going to charge you anything, but I've seen your work and it's really good. Can I just start like acting as a representative for you and trying to get you work? And so he kind of put me on retainer as a guy that could do stuff, make images real. And he just went around Columbus like promoting me for nothing. Like, guys like that. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, there's this whole idea of like, first of all, be humble. You're not too good for anything. To your point about the actor, get around people who are in life where you want to be. That's huge. I mean, I can teach you how to draw, but you're not going to come to me for diet advice. People should have fruit on the tree. If they're going to give you advice about something, look at the tree. If there's no fruit on their tree in that subject, you don't have to ignore them as a person entirely, but sort of have this internal panel of people. I have a guy I go to about parenting stuff. Mm-hmm. I have a guy that I go to about financial stuff. I have an art mentor. Right, like have these people in your life that you can go to on any given subject, but make sure they have fruit on the tree because everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then just show up. I mean, that artifact group example, just show up. If you get an invite to something like that, show up, be early. And then the other thing I think is important, back to my sort of whining about seeing what my peers were doing and the success that they were having, is be very careful about the comparison game, especially in the days of social media. Instagram, when I scroll through there, so I have 2 Instagram accounts, and one is just for the artists that I follow, and then one is personal. When I scroll through the one that is just artists that are like my heroes in art, it's a very fine line between being sort of inspired and immobilized by their skill. I think it's important that whatever thing if you want to be a cyclist or you want to climb mountains without a rope, I just watched Free Solo. Make sure that you're going to people and being inspired by them, not immobilized by their skill. Because you can very quickly look at that and go, I'll never be at that level. Right. And it'll demotivate you. I think you should look at that stuff and go, okay, I'm not going to try to be like them, but what is it about what they're doing that I'm drawn to? And sort of get around the heat, you know?
I think it's funny. A colleague at work, Jeremy, I think he'll be on at some point. He sent a picture over. He said, "Have you seen this Tim and Eric skit?" And if you don't know who Tim and Eric are, you can look it up. But it looked like this intentionally bad '80s Photoshop job of somebody. And he said, "Oh, it's not actually a Tim and Eric skit. This is a picture of Joni Ives from an actual Apple commercial in the '90s." And it looked like it was intentionally meant to be like a bad work candid photo. And he's like, if this guy can do what he's doing, any of us can do what we want to do. Like, it was crazy, this photo of Joni Ives. So, who just became a independent freelancer, by the way. He's leaving Apple.
Wow.
I think maybe since he can't be CEO, he's going to keep working for Apple as a freelancer as his first client, by the way. I think his new company's called Love From. All
That's
is one
cool.
word. So he's going to be independent, but still contract designs for Apple. But I thought that kind of reminded me of that.
So I just think it's important to recognize those people, right? Like supportive family, supportive teachers early on, second grade, Debbie Combs giving me a illustration project, right? Like those people that saw something and encouraged and fostered it, instead of saying, because there are lots of these stories too, that's not worthwhile. That's a silly pursuit. You shouldn't do that. All those people, the Gary Wells, the Lynn Nobles of the world, who taught me about excellence and doing your best. And then even now, right? So in my professional career doing this crazy graphic facilitation thing, it was Gary Comerford who was always trying to find ways to help me infuse my love of illustration in the corporate world and kind of be this weird bridge that exists between the non-creative and technical and the creative and the art. Adrian Prier, Melissa Walden, these people in my life who just found avenues and ways for me to be able to do storytelling through imagery and sort of just fuse that with corporate America now. So if there's young artists out there, I would just tell you, draw, collect art, be around artists, ask questions. I have called so many famous artists over the years, just called them up because I'm like, they're goobers at a desk doing pictures just like I am.
Yeah.
And in only one, there was only one example where they were a little rude.
Yeah.
But every single other person has been willing. The guys, Sports Illustrated for Kids. Do you remember that magazine?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So the artist who did, Gary Locke was the artist who did a lot of those crazy, exaggerated basketball players dunking.
Yeah.
Like I called him up and just asked him some questions. Super nice guy. Talked to me for like an hour on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm just a punk art student. But
That's
these
really cool.
people who, and even on Facebook now, I reach out to these guys and I was like, hey, what do you do about this? How should I think about this? What should I be doing next? Do I need an agent? They're all so willing to just answer questions and be cool. And to the point now where my heroes, the stuff that I used to cut out of magazines as a kid, I'm now talking with these guys one-on-one. And
That's
it's
really cool.
I'm considering joining the National Cartoonist Society. And in order to get access to this society, you need a letter of recommendation from 2 people. And so I know somebody who's already a part of it, Paul Combs, phenomenal illustrator. And he said, do you have somebody that can write your second letter of recommendation that you know is the part of the society? And I said, I don't. And he goes, let me see what I can do. So he reached out to Tom Richmond, who does all the caricatures for Mad Magazine.
Wow.
So he tells Tom to look at my work on Instagram. Tom writes me this email. I'm going to get emotional. Tom writes me this email. He's like, hey, man, saw your work. Great stuff. I'll start the letter now. He's like, I have no doubts that you'd be a great fit for this organization.
Wow.
And so it's just like, how did I, this punk kid from Ada, Ohio, and it's just all those things that we talked about. So again, I'm under no delusion that I've arrived. But if I can help anybody in any way ever, please reach out. I would love to talk to you about following the thing that you love, and because again, I'm very passionate about it. I know we've gone over. I could easily talk for another 3 hours.
Good. So since you have a corporate gig and then you freelance probably since high school, right?
And never the two shall mix.
Do you have any funny stories from freelancing?
Oh, so many.
Just 1 or 2, just quick ones. Either just purely absurd or people wanting you to do something horribly unrealistic, or I'm putting you on the spot again, but
No, I do think that you've seen the old, there's like, you can have it fast, you can have it quick, or you can have it good. You get to pick 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot of stories that are the antithesis of that, sort of like people that want these crazy things that no, I don't have any, like, I could probably think of some better and share later, but it's just, it's interesting trying to help people who think they want something and then they say, I'm hiring you because of your skill. You're the artist, do your thing.
Right.
And then they very quickly get in the mix.
Yeah.
So there's a funny meme that went around that said, like, it's fake. It's not real rates, but it's an artist rates. And it's like, here's what it costs for me to do it. Here's what it costs for me to do it with your input. And here's what it costs for me to do it with you standing over my shoulder. And it goes up each time, right? But
I can appreciate that.
But it's interesting to try to, the teeter-totter between me being the quote-unquote pretty it up guy.
Right.
Hey, here's this thing, just pretty it up. I know what I want, just pretty it up. Versus, do you actually want me to be a creative consultant and actually help you tell a better story? Or do you just want me to execute your thing? I'm happy to do both. Let's
Right.
just make that clear from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So some of those things that all of those funny stories I've learned how to talk to people differently now in a way that helps them get a better product, helps me enjoy more
Right.
doing it. Yeah, I have a lot of those stories.
Well, and we'll come back to, I think it would be great to revisit. A lot of that is kind of the background of you as an artist, like life of an artist. I want to come back to creative process because I think that's a whole different discussion and might even be a couple episodes. And Kendall, you'd be awesome to weigh in there later. But I think that would be great to talk about another time.
Yeah.
And after we've sort of digested this kind of life of an artist idea. So I think that's great. You covered everything that I put you on the spot for.
Well, and it's interesting because we've come back to the idea of storytelling a lot, and I think there's a storytelling element here. One of my best friends in college and roommate, A.G. Ford, was one of the guys that I mentioned. He's now a New York Times best-selling illustrator. He's done books for, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he's done books for Mariah Carey, and he's all these like bio children's books. His first book was the story of Obama before Obama had gotten elected president. And so he did the story of Barack's life. So then when Barack gets elected, he's now a New York Times bestselling illustrator. He lives outside of Dallas, and him and I were talking one day, and we were kind of saying, like, I told him, or he said, I think it was me because it sounds better for the story, you make much better pictures. Like, your execution and your ability to make pretty painted pictures far surpasses mine. But then he was saying about me, he goes, you've managed to find a way to bridge the gap between the creative and the non-creative. And so I was looking at a children's book that he was doing. It was a story about your kids growing up. And at the end of the book, sort of the end of the story of these babies and all the fun phases that babies go through, the end of the book was about, I forget what the ending was, but the book was still in production. And I kind of saw the last page and I go, oh man, it would have been much better if it would have ended this way. And he goes, see that right there, like your ability to tell stories. And that's why I love my day job so much, because I'm working in the tech space, but doodling on walls and helping tell stories that very technical, typically non-creative folks are able to now finally see it in a different way. And it's the old adage that a picture's worth 1,000 words, but they see it in a different way now and they go, wow, I've been doing this job, or we've been doing this thing for all these years, and it just now hit me, the impact that this, because we're so in the weeds of our little thing that we don't really see the big picture. So I think what I've managed to eke out is this bridge between those two worlds, that there's something really interesting about the storytelling aspect of it. So to your point about creative process, and I would love to do a deep dive on some of that with other creative types, whether they're photographers or they make music or whatever. At the end of the day, it's about storytelling.
Indeed. Kory, thank you.
Hey.
We before, obviously we had planned to talk to Kory about this, and when Dylan and I thought that it would be a good idea to maybe dedicate an episode to Kory's story, it wasn't something that Kory was necessarily like all gung ho about, and it speaks to him, and sort of his humility. So Kory, we appreciate your insight, and also making that point that like we are basically just three schlums, but I think each of us have like worthwhile experience as well, and I think it's good for us to maybe teach from those things, and hopefully encourage some others through stories like Kory. So again, Kory, appreciate you sharing with us today.
Absolutely.
Anything else, guys?
I feel good.
Go Art.
Go Art. So you can follow us on all of the social media things. Kory, do you want to plug any of your Hubble Art stuff?
Yeah. You can follow my stuff at Hubble Arts, HUBBELLARTS. I'm on Instagram, Facebook under that handle. And I've been reluctant to do that because I didn't want this to be like about that. But since we talk so much about it, I think it's good and fitting. So follow me at Hubble Arts, and I'm always for hire.
Cool. And we're also for hire at From the Middle.
That's right.
If you want to hire us, we'll sell your toothpaste if you want us to do that.
Here's looking at you, MeUndies. I'm a big MeUndies fan if they want to sponsor us.
Right on. But anyway, you can find us and send your advertisement requests to From the Mid Pod on social media sites, platforms.
That's right.
You can find us on YouTube there as well. You can send us an email from the middle at protonmail.com. Or you can click a link that's probably in the description of this podcast, and you can send us a voice message that way as well.
Please do. That would be really fun. We'd love to hear from you guys.
We haven't had one of those yet. Someone needs to be the first, and that gives us a little audio bite. So if we like your question, we like your comment, whatever, if it's appropriate, we can actually put you into our episode in that way, and then we can kind of respond to your questions in that manner. That would be really cool. We're excited to do that kind of thing. We're excited to keep doing this here podcast.
Yeah,
so,
it'd be way better if you guys did it and I didn't have to make up voices and pretend to be listeners. So
like
if
a silly character.
Yeah, if you guys could do it, that'd be way better.
Right on. So until next time, my name is Kendall.
I'm Kory.
And Dylan.
Thank you for listening.
Ow.
I'm going to go overthink everything I just said.